Ladies and gentlemen, honoured guests, I now call upon Professor Wendy Thompson, Vice-Chancellor of the University of London.
Welcome. Dean, colleagues, distinguished guests, graduates, friends, and family. Thank you, everyone, and congratulations. After years of hard work, countless hours in the Senate House Library, exams, dissertations, sacrifice, and late nights, some of them studying, you have made it to graduation. Graduates here today represent the rich diversity of studies in the humanities, many completing taught master's programs in subjects as varied as legislative drafting, human rights, history of the book, art history, curatorship and Renaissance culture, and cultural, intellectual, and visual history. Others have earned a master's by research, contributing to knowledge about the history of queer British fiction, taxation, the South Staffordshire iron industry, and the Medici family. Collectively, your studies represent, as you can see, a depth and breadth of what the humanities and social sciences have to offer. Our mission at the University of London, led by the School of Advanced Study, is to enable everyone to appreciate the benefits of the humanities and social sciences, to advocate for their importance, and to provide the intellectual infrastructure to foster new discoveries. I'm sure this is a mission that is shared by everyone in this room, and I know you will contribute to it in whatever you do next. In a turbulent world, you represent a global wave of positive leadership for social good. The knowledge and skills that you have learned here and the values that you have demonstrated by choosing to study the subjects that you have prepare you well to navigate the social and cultural shifts facing the world and forge a brighter future for us all. You have graduated into a digital world that is connected and full of data. You have more information and channels of communication at your fingertips than any previous generation. Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, emails, podcasts, online channels, Substack. Every day there's something new. Even the Writers Guild has a guide to self-publishing. The volume of data and ideas created, collected, copied, and consumed is increasing at mind-breaking speed. How to navigate this sea of information and know what or who to trust is a critical challenge that is facing our society. And that's a question for you. Artificial intelligence, AI, has become an everyday reality and topic of debate. Hope or horror, the Guardian headline read in the days before the Prime Minister's Bletchley Park AI Summit. Even Google DeepMind chief Dennis Hassabis, who says he is not a pessimist, warned that the threat of extinction from AI should be treated as a societal risk, comparable to pandemics or nuclear weapons. Sobering thoughts. Just the kind of argument to be subject to critical thinking. AI is a game changer in the field of education and knowledge creation as well. A recent survey commissioned by Turnitin found that nearly half of the 1,000 students in more than 600 institutions were using AI tools. Only about a quarter of faculty members were doing so. So, as often is the case, students are way ahead. And you're not going to put the genie back in the box. So, what are the ethical, economic, and social implications of AI? What assumptions and values underpin the algorithms? What regulatory framework should be placed around them? The people who can answer those questions are the kind of people sitting in this room, the graduates sitting in this room. The people who can answer those questions, the legal, philosophical, policy, and historical experts here today, bring a unique understanding of the implications of this technology and how to engage the public in its understanding and make it a force for good. I'm going to leave you this little test in the middle of this speech. I don't think that we've got an assessment organized, but you can talk amongst yourselves. A little test, because once you get into AI, you playing with it yourself. So here's something. Guess who this is as imagined by Chat GBT? This is a person. Artificial intelligence is not a separate entity from us, but a reflection of our own mind. By cultivating it with skillful means and ethical values, we can enhance our own enlightenment and benefit all things. This is a very famous philosopher who I'll let you figure out as you're sitting there. So while AI will simplify many tasks, it cannot replace people like you. The essence of being human, of humanity, is the humanities. And for us to overcome the modern malaise of anomie, alienation, and social division, we need the humanities and social sciences. Yes, you're graduating into a complicated world, but you are the people who can reshape it into something more human, something more equitable, something better for us all. No pressure. In a time where we can sometimes feel more divided than ever, I think it's important to recognize that now in this room, all of you, all of us, share a fundamental, meaningful connection. We are all members of the University of London global community, an institution with more than 500 million alumni. Each one has dedicated their time and talents to bettering themselves and their communities through education. So what next for you all? Well, there's many great role models to guide and inspire humanities scholars, whatever people say. Look around at the leadership of some of our great institutions. Tim Davis, former DG of the BBC, studied English. Amanda Pritchard, Chief Executive of the NHS, modern history. Sadiq Khan, law. Andrew Bailey, history. You go through these individuals and, it really belies the notion that really humanities are not the way of creating the people we need for the future. They are, and the proof is evident. And I might say Justin Trudeau, Prime Minister of Canada, studied literature at McGill, my alma mater. So the list goes on. And I'm sure by being here, you've demonstrated that what is next for you will be extraordinary. It could be in culture, politics, research, the civil service, in higher education. The title or position is not what's important. What is important is the good that you do through your collective effort as part of this great community. So be critical, be kind, and stay curious. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, honoured guests, I now call upon Professor Joe Fox, Dean of the School of Advanced Study and Pro-Vice-Chancellor, Research and Engagement.
Vice-Chancellor, esteemed guests, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, to our graduating students, many, many congratulations. Undertaking advanced study requires commitment, dedication, and above all, real passion. You will have spent many hours wrestling with complex and challenging questions, and many hours wondering whether you can answer them. You will have absorbed much information, much more than you could ever put into your final written work, and I know the pain of losing that information, so hard won through your studies to the cutting room floor, but that nonetheless you need to inform your choices and contextualize your arguments. And you will have no doubt confronted the realization that the more you know about a subject, the more questions you have. So your education does not end today. In many ways, this is just the beginning. We also owe a special word of thanks to those who guided you in your studies, to your tutors and your mentors who are here today, and to your friends and families who are here today too to support you as you celebrate your success, just as I'm sure they've been with you every step of the way through your educational journey. And all of these efforts are so very important. We need graduates in the arts, humanities, and social sciences more now than ever before. The challenges we face as a modern society are complex, and the solutions to them will be equally complex in needs of the kinds of explanation, analysis, and most importantly, human creativity that the graduates of our programs bring. We need graduates who understand the human dimensions to societal problems. To confront climate change, global mobility, social injustice, human rights, poverty, we need to understand people. And in these troubled times, we'll need to reaffirm the values we hold and determine together what kind of society we want to be. These profound and urgent questions require insight into the human condition from multiple and combined perspectives. Our studies are, of course, about making a difference to the world. But to study the arts, humanities, and social sciences is also about making sense of our own existence. And this seems especially relevant as we celebrate the 400th anniversary of the publication of the first folios, the collective works of William Shakespeare. 2 of those folios are housed here in Senate House Library, and please do visit our wonderful exhibition about these remarkable manuscripts while you're here with us today. Ben Jonson, Shakespeare's contemporary, was surely right to note that Shakespeare's work was not of an age, but for all time. And that is because all human emotion is there. Guilt, fear, happiness, sorrow, shame, distress, and also all that we face. Loss, betrayal, intrigue, love, death. In this way, the arts provide a pathway to understanding, meaning, and purpose. And that is why they remain so crucial and why they should remain a fundamental part of our education from the early years onwards. And it's wonderful to be able to come together here today to celebrate the influence of the arts through our honorary graduates' remarkable contribution. The school is proud to find itself at the heart of these debates over the future of the arts and humanities and social sciences. We enter these debates comforted by the knowledge that we're not alone in our passion for the arts, for languages and cultures, history, literature, classical study, philosophy, through to the law, to anthropology, and to sociology. It's no surprise that we turn to these disciplines at dark moments and for guidance. Turn on the television and radio, listen to or create music of any kind. Sing, dance, read, scan a podcast series, walk into a bookshop, go to the theatre, the cinema, stream a film. Marvel at the incredible street performances we see in our towns and cities. Visit a local museum, library, or gallery. Our disciplines continue to foster the next generation's imagination, providing them with the open mind, the creative mind, and importantly, the skeptical mind they will need to confront the challenges we will leave them. Our disciplines bring people together in local projects that transform communities. They're at the center of contemporary debates over social justice, identities, the laws that govern us, and a fair society. Our disciplines, then, are all around us and are woven into the fabric of the everyday. And that's why, here in the school, we channel our energies into pursuing new knowledge that will make a real difference and to celebrate our disciplines confidently and proudly. And we look to our graduates to bring these values out into the world. So, congratulations once again, and know that whatever you do, wherever you go, wherever you deploy your considerable skills and your creativity, you will always have a home here. And we will be behind you, urging you to even greater success, achievements, and personal happiness.
The The presentation of graduands will now commence. I therefore call upon Professor Joe Fox, Dean of the School of Advanced Study and Pro-Vice Chancellor, Research and Engagement.
I beg leave to present the following graduates.
Graduands of the Institute of Advanced Legal Studies awarded the LLM in Drafting Legislation, Regulation and Policy. Davy St. Luce, awarded with distinction. Abisha Toussaint, awarded with distinction. Graduand of the Institute of Advanced Legal Studies, awarded the Doctor of Philosophy with a thesis entitled A Critical Examination of Judicial Independence as a Bastion of the Rule of Law and Constitutionalism in Sierra Leone, supervised by Professor Avram Sher and Professor Colin King. Emmanuel Safa Abdullahi. Graduand from the Institute of Advanced Legal Studies, awarded a Doctor of Philosophy with a thesis entitled The Prospect of Operating a Sound Banking System in Developing Countries, The Case for Pakistan, supervised by Dr. Mahmoud Bagheri and Professor Colin King. Zishan Mian. Graduand from the Institute of Advanced Legal Studies, awarded a Doctor of Philosophy with a thesis entitled Protecting the Integrity of the Investment Contract, The Case for a Limited Fiduciary Prescription, supervised by Professor Barry Ryder and Professor Chizu Nakajima. Christopher Steers. Graduand from the Institute of Advanced Legal Studies, awarded a Doctor of Philosophy with a thesis entitled Member State Sovereignty in the Field of Direct Taxation. Is the failure of the Court of Justice in some instances to provide a consistent and coherent scheme of analysis of alleged restrictions to the exercise of the freedoms of movement a consequence of activism, error, or both? Supervised by Professor Philip Baker and Dr. Konstantin Stefanou. Graham Turner. graduand from the Institute of Advanced Legal Studies, awarded a Doctor of Philosophy with the thesis entitled International and Domestic Measures, an inquiry into the anti-money laundering mechanisms from the perspective of financial regulation and corporate governance and recommendations for China, supervised by Professor Chizu Nakajima and Professor Barry Ryder, Shitseong Yu. Graduates of the Institute of Commonwealth Studies awarded the MA in Understanding and Securing Human Rights. Elizabeth Francis, awarded with distinction. Eleanor Heath, awarded with distinction. Emma Pierce, awarded with distinction and winner of the Albie Sachs Dissertation Prize. Taylor Prentice, awarded with distinction. Thais Vojvodic, awarded with distinction. Graduates of the Institute of Commonwealth Studies awarded the Master of Arts in Human Rights. Nijina Istakanazi. Amy Perot, awarded with distinction. Li Fong Zhu. Hui Lam Chan. Lauren Ann Schneider. Graduates of the Institute of Commonwealth Studies awarded the Postgraduate Diploma in Human Rights. Angela Chung. Graduate of the Institute of Commonwealth Studies, awarded a Doctor of Philosophy with a thesis entitled Contesting Commodification, Subaltern Human Rights Challenges to Neoliberalism, supervised by Professor Damien Short and Dr. Corinne Lennox. John Duncan. Graduate from the Institute of Commonwealth Studies, awarded a Doctor of Philosophy with a thesis entitled Can We Women Unite to Stem the Tide? Situating and Reconceptualizing Women in the Construct of Genocide, supervised by Professor Damien Short and Professor Sarah Singer. Annabelle Higgins. Graduand from the Institute of Commonwealth Studies, awarded a Doctor of Philosophy with a thesis entitled Decolonizing Transitional Justice, a framework for historical reparation for Afro-descendant peoples in Colombia, supervised by Dr. Corinne Lennox and Professor Damien Short. Esther Ojulari. Graduand from the Institute of Commonwealth Studies, awarded a Doctor of Philosophy with a thesis entitled A Risk Approach to Government Perceptions of Irregular Migrants and Asylum Seekers in the Legal and Policy Frameworks of Australia and the United Kingdom, supervised by Professor Sarah Singer and Professor Philip Murphy. Dean Thompson. Graduands of the Institute of English Studies, awarded the Doctor of Philosophy with a thesis entitled A Publishing History of Queer British Fiction, 1940 to 1970, supervised by Dr. Andrew Nash and Professor Sarah Churchwell. Christopher Adams. Graduand from the Institute of English Studies, awarded a Doctor of Philosophy with a thesis entitled Motivating the Citizen Soldier, the Provision and Use of Books, Pamphlets, Newspapers and Magazines by the British Army during the Second World War, 1939 to 1945, supervised by Professor Rick Rylance and Dr. Andrew Nash. Stephen Thompson. Graduand from the Institute of English Studies, awarded a Doctor of Philosophy with a thesis entitled Moguls Collecting Mughals, a study of early 20th century European and North American collectors of Islamic book art, supervised by Dr. Laura Cleaver and Professor Claire Lees. Karen Winslow. Graduand of the Heathrop College, awarded the Doctor of Philosophy with a thesis entitled Tilting Eastwards, the Jewish-Christian Encounter and Theologies of Land, Palestinian Christian Thought, Zionist Political Theologies, and the Ecclesial Perspective of Father David Niehaus, with special reference to the Holy Land as the renewed context of the theological turn in Jewish-Christian dialogue, supervised by Dr. Anthony O'Mahony and Professor Michael Barnes. Peter Colwell. Graduand from Heathrop College, awarded a Doctor of Philosophy with a thesis entitled The Islamic Legal and Cultural Influences on Britain's Sharia Councils, supervised by Dr. Ahmad Akhtar and Professor John Bowen. Shawikar Shaheen. Graduand from Heathrop College, awarded a Doctor of Philosophy with a thesis entitled Retrieving the Imago Argens in the Structure of Systematic Theology and Spiritual Exercise, a search inspired by the illumination of the master of the early 14th century, Luttrell Salter, supervised by Professor Johann Hoff. Christina Marshall. Graduands of the Institute of Historical Research, awarded the Doctor of Philosophy with a thesis entitled The Cameraman's Experience of the Second World War, a study of the Army Film and Photographic Unit's dope sheets, 1939 to 1943, supervised by Professor Joe Fox and Miss Fiona Kelly. Oliver Carter Wakefield. Graduand from the Institute of Historical Research, awarded a Doctor of Philosophy with a thesis entitled The Development of the Landscape Associated with the South Staffordshire Iron Industry, 1500 to 1800, supervised by Dr. Chris Thornton and Dr. Adam Chapman. Steve Lewitt. Graduand from the Institute of Languages, Cultures and Societies, awarded a Doctor of Philosophy with a thesis entitled Treading a Fine Line, Progressive Patriotism in Practice in the Left-Wing Journalism of the Weimar Republic, supervised by Professor Gordella Weiss-Sussex and Dr. Catherine Smale. Jack Arscott. Graduand from the Institute of Languages, Cultures and Societies, awarded a Doctor of Philosophy with a thesis entitled Beyond the Bulls, The Live and Afterlives of St. Francisco Solano, Unraveling the First Canonization Process in the New World, supervised by Professor Linda Newson and Professor Celia Cusson. Carlos Viconi Camera. Graduates of the Warburg Institute awarded the MA in Art History, Curatorship and Renaissance Culture. Ruby Armstrong. Jennifer Aston, awarded with distinction. James Brown, awarded with distinction. Elliot Christie, awarded with distinction. Layli Constantin, awarded with distinction. Anna Duckworth. Max Hayden Case. Yu Xuan He, awarded with distinction. Paloma Lay, awarded with distinction. Hyomin Lee, awarded with distinction. Marlene Manuncia. Daisy Roth. Georgina Rowley. Joseph Rowley, awarded with distinction. Graduates of the Warburg Institute awarded the MA in Cultural, Intellectual and Visual History. Hannah Berenza, awarded with distinction. Alexander Gould, awarded with distinction. William Hopkinson, awarded with distinction. Aniko Petri, awarded with distinction. Helena Zazevich, awarded with distinction. Graduate of the Warburg Institute, awarded the Doctor of Philosophy with a thesis entitled Waxing Devotion, the Economic and Devotional Life Cycles of Wax XX Photos in Florence, 1300 to 1500, supervised by Dr. Rembrandt Deutz and Professor Michelle O'Malley. Louisa Mackenzie. Ladies and gentlemen, that now concludes the presentation of graduates for the School of Advanced Study. I'd now like to welcome Emma Pierce, MA, one of our graduating master's students, back to the stage to give an address on behalf of our master's graduates. Emma.
Thank you. It's an honour to have been asked to speak today. I'd like to think I was asked because of my inspirational qualities, but I think it might have been through default because it's taken me 3 years to finish my master's degree in human rights. Having come straight to my master's from an undergraduate course before that, and so having been a student most of my adult life, you can imagine that the loss of my student discount has hit me pretty hard. Anyway, the reason why it took me so long to finish the course was because I was too ill to work for about a year and a half. I had long COVID. So when I was thinking about what to say today, I thought, firstly, that I should thank the university enormously for being so flexible and understanding. It's something that stood out to me about SAS, because a lot of big universities aren't like that at all, and it does really matter. Personally, I know that the kindness I was treated with and the flexibility I was given allowed me to get better enough to start studying again, because I didn't have the stress of having to worry about university deadlines. So thank you for that. I'm also so grateful to all the teaching staff, admin team, security, library, and cafe staff who looked after us so well. Studying a subject you love can be an amazing experience and a huge privilege, but I know that everyone in this room, all the graduates in this room, will have faced some challenges to get here today, in one way or another, and challenges which others might not have known about. If this room were to reflect national statistics, about a fifth of graduates here would have a registered disability. About a third will have been managing a mental illness while studying. Others will have faced different kinds of challenges. For example, I think it's significant that almost half of the people here will have been studying as an international student. Because even though studying abroad can be such an exciting opportunity, living away from your family and adapting to life in London and the loneliness that sometimes brings while trying to focus on your studies isn't the easiest thing. On top of that, if English wasn't your first language, you might have been taking classes and writing assignments in English for the first time. Many people will also have been doing jobs alongside their degree. Even before the cost of living crisis, 3/4 of the master's students here will have worked at least a 30-hour week. Maybe you also worked hard for years to save up the money to do your degree in the first place. Or your parents worked hard for years saving up the money for you to do your degree. If you came to this degree quite a few years after your undergraduate, you probably had to brush up on your essay structure or your referencing skills, or felt an unnerving sense of freedom at having only a few lessons a week and so much time to yourself. Regardless of whether you face many, some, or none of these particular challenges, I'm sure that life threw surprises at you during your time at SAS. I hope that today everyone can take a break from their busy post-university lives in order to pause and reflect on the achievement of getting here, and perhaps also to mourn the loss of the reliable £5 hot lunches in the cafe downstairs. I also want to acknowledge that as a human rights student, and for my classmates too, we are here at this graduation today because of the contribution of research subjects who participated directly through interviews and surveys, or indirectly through us gathering data from human rights reports and other research papers. It's no longer enough simply to study people's suffering and use it, however much it's in good faith, to further our careers. We should also be activist scholars, ensuring that our research involves victims and advocates on their behalf. I owe a significant debt of gratitude to the research of brave Palestinian and Israeli human rights activists and the testimonies of ordinary citizens whose words form the basis of my coursework and my dissertation on the topic of Palestinian rights. And I have to remark on the steadfastness, grace, and spirit of ordinary Palestinians, in particular in the past few months, in the face of the undeniable genocide in Gaza. I'd like to thank you all for listening to me speak today. To all the graduates here, I wish you an enormous amount of luck with your future endeavours, and I will miss this place immensely. Thank you.
Thank you, Emma. I'd now like to welcome Dr. Emmanuel Abdullahi, one of our graduating doctoral students, to the stage to give an address on behalf of our graduates.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I just commented to my colleague that I think we're saying the same things, without even having conferred on what we're saying. Members of faculty, esteemed guests, my fellow graduates, now I can say my fellow academics. It is with humility but immense pride that I stand here today. It is the culmination of a long journey, often an arduous one. A journey that began for me as a boy living in poor Freetown, Sierra Leone, walking to school barefoot, to now a PhD degree holder. I would like to share a few reflections of my time here. One of the icons that I have admired is the former South African leader, Nelson Mandela. He once said, "Education is the most powerful tool you can use to change the world." Even before I heard these words, I worked to improve the world where I grew up, of poverty, injustice, and war. Since then, Mandela's words have been the guidepost to what I have achieved and wish to accomplish in the future. The journey to this moment has been transformative, and it has instilled in me a profound sense of personal responsibility to effect positive change. I can vividly recall during my first workshop here. During lunch, we were given free lunch. Amidst the anxiety, I remarked to a fellow colleague, humorously I hope, that it felt like we were being fed to be led to the gallows. Little did I know that the degree of hard work for the years to come will be characterized by intense intellectual and emotional labor. Here in the city of London, with the timeless allure, we found moments of respite for our studies and inspiration. Still, it could not shield us from the tumultuous events that unraveled locally and globally. This trend of sweetening debate was brought forward by Professor Avram Sher, who happened to have been my supervisor, who would bring chocolate to a qualitative research class. Imagine chocolate and qualitative research methods. This continued with coffee after an intense email exchange on the structure, language, and format of my thesis. The coffees will always come. It was also a difficult moment because it was a moment that the coronavirus has struck the world, and which brought unprecedented challenges. It disrupted our studies and altered the fabric of our studies and our daily lives. It forced us to adapt, innovate, and confront our fragility and that of the world around us. Yet, through resilience and perseverance, we stand here today. We are here not as recipients of degree accolades only, but as stewards of knowledge and agents for change. I hail from a region that has been scarred by the ravage of conflict, where the pursuit of victory through military means has perpetrated suffering and despair. My own experience, which at the time I would have avoided if I could, has given me an insight into global suffering. It is a lesson, a stark one at that, underscoring that peace and diplomacy, not war and conflict, are the proper conduit of lasting peace. Those in conflict should, without exception, seek peaceful means to resolve them, to alleviate human suffering. No groups, whether of state or non-state actors or state-sponsored actors, should unleash violence on the innocent. Global leaders, and I hope some of us here today will be in that position, must step forward to uphold the best of human values and to forgo merely political interest. Today, innocent Palestinians and Israelis should not suffer for the action of the few. As we receive our doctoral degrees, we must recognize the tremendous potential they afford us to be the catalyst of positive transformation. Our degrees must not be hung on the wall merely, relegated to symbols of personal achievement. They should be wielded as instruments to advocate for democracy, to champion human rights, and to espouse the values of global peace. In a world beset by iniquity and discord, we must be proponents of love, equality, and justice. As we embark on the next phase of our lives, let us not be content with achieving knowledge alone. Let us strive to be advocates for the marginalized, the oppressed, and the downtrodden. Let us give them the voices so that they can speak for themselves. Let us be relentless in our pursuit of a world where every individual is afforded dignity, where justice reigns supreme, and where the ideals of our degrees are not confined to academic circles, but where those ideals permeate the very fabric of our society. As we graduate, let us commit to supporting a government system that upholds civil and political rights alongside socioeconomic rights. It is essential to recognize that civil and political rights alone are insufficient, as they leave billions trapped in poverty. Often, countries are accused of human rights violations simply because they are too poor to afford adequate hospitals and schools. Nations striving together, both developing and developed, must work towards realizing socioeconomic rights to uplift the bottom billion, a term coined by British economist Paul Collier. I hope that each of us can utilize our degrees to contribute to a world that aims to alleviate poverty for all rather than enrich a few. Governments, civil society, and the private sector must embrace this new goal to foster a peaceful and inclusive world. In the immortal words of Julius Caesar, "We need, with thee, we see. I came, I saw, and I conquered." But I will say, we came, we saw, and we conquered. Let this sentiment resonate as we venture forth, armed with the knowledge, experience, and determination to effect positive change, to see injustice and to conquer it. My heartfelt congratulations to my fellow graduates. May our collective endeavor pave the way for a brighter and more equitable future for all of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Emmanuel. There'll now be a short musical interlude performed by Susie Wonshu-Ki and Sydney Grace from the Royal Academy of Music. You're required to remain in your seats during the performance, as the ceremony will recommence immediately after. Thank you very much. We now move on to the conferment of the honorary degree, Doctor of Literature. I now call upon Professor Claire Lees, Vice Dean of the School of Advanced Study and Director of the Institute of English Studies, to give the oration for Chiwetel Ejiofor, the recipient of this year's honorary degree.
Vice-Chancellor, in accordance with the Charter, statutes and ordinances of the University, I present to you for the award of the degree of Doctor of Literature honoris causa Chiwetel Ejiofor, CBE. Awarded an OBE in 2008 and a CBE in 2015 for services to the arts and drama, Chiwetel Ejiofor is a BAFTA-winning actor, writer, director, whose distinctions also include a Laurence Olivier for his 2007 Othello at the Donmar Warehouse, an Academy Awards nomination for Best Actor for his role as Solomon Northup in 12 Years a Slave, and several nominations for his feature film debut as director and writer of The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind, 2019, in which he also played Trywell Kamkwamba. You may also know Chiwetel Ejiofor as Carl Mordor in the Marvel Cinematic Universe Doctor Strange films, as Peter in that perennial favourite rom-com Love Actually, or as the fabulous Lola in Kinky Boots, for which he received a Golden Globe and a British Independent Film Award, one of two he holds. You might have seen him as Luke in Children of Men, as Okwe in Dirty Pretty Things, his first British Independent Film Award, or as Detective Bill Mitchell in Inside Man. He's played Romeo in Romeo and Juliet, Malcolm in Macbeth, Othello several times, among other Shakespearean roles. He's been Trigorin in The Seagull, Christopher in the premiere of Blue Orange, the eponymous Everyman in the adaptation of the late medieval play Everyman by the then poet laureate Carol Ann Duffy, Paul or Palamon in the BBC's reworking of Chaucer's The Knight's Tale, and the voice of Scar in Disney's live-action film, Lion King. Chiwetel Ejiofor is, to borrow a line from As You Like It, a man of many parts. And those parts are a measure of his standing. Chiwetel has worked alongside, and I'm just going to kind of name drop because there's too many of them, but let's go for it, alongside Denzel Washington, Bill Nighy, Keira Knightley, Don Cheadle, for example. After the National Youth Theatre, as a newly arrived student at LAMDA, the London Academy of Music and Dramatic Arts, he auditioned for and won the part of Ensign James Covey in Steven Spielberg's Amistad. That's at the age of 19, I believe. So his student career was somewhat short. He has also worked with directors Stephen Frears, Steve McQueen, Richard Curtis, Rufus Norris, and Spike Lee, for example, at the Royal Court, the Young Vic, and the National Theatre, as well as the Donmar. He's just as comfortable on radio and television as he is on stage and screen, in front of the camera, but also behind it. Have I mentioned the audiobooks, the singing, the dancing, and the wire work? This is an actor unafraid to tackle the innovative and the classic, the thriller and the blockbuster, the complex and the romantic. Chiwetel is, we might say, almost Shakespearean in the breadth of his accomplishments. And it is with Shakespeare that Chiwetel's interest in acting began as a schoolboy in southeast London. So, as Senate House Library celebrates the 400 journey of the first printed book of Shakespeare's collected works, known as the First Folio, it is fitting that we also celebrate Chiwetel's works to date. Senate House 2, this very building, has played its part on screen. So I'm going to name check the Batman films, of course, but maybe Bond as well. And not only on film, but in the political, cultural, and educational life of the nation. As the Ministry of Information in the Second World War, Graham Greene's Ministry of Fear, George Orwell's Ministry of Truth, and as the realization of William Beveridge's vision for a world of learning in a world of affairs. We're in the Beveridge Hall now, realized by architect Charles Holden, and you can see the plans for this iconic modernist building in which we are currently gathered. Those plans are currently on exhibition upstairs on the first floor. And we have to thank Professor Bill Sherman from Anne Sennett House Library for curating that exhibit. The School of Advanced Study engages with and supports research into the literatures and cultures, languages and histories, philosophies, laws and communities that comprise the arts, the humanities and the social sciences. We seek to understand and share these worlds of learning with those worlds of affairs of which Beveridge spoke, to share them with our students, our audiences, and our publics now, with you. These ambitions are not without their challenges, and we've heard about some of those challenges today. In his most recent film, Rob Peace, Chiwetel, director, actor, and writer of the film, explores the short life of an exceptional African-American student whose learning at Yale clashed tragically with his home, community, and family. The film, which is just about to be released, the film does not flinch from the complexities of social and racial inequities, the expectations of elite institutions, and the conflicts of individual aspiration and family belonging, themes long embedded in Chiwetel's work. Indeed, in his many parts, Chiwetel brings to us the different stories and characters we need to imagine and to reimagine so that we can better understand what it means to be human. Stories of freedom and slavery, immigration and poverty, race and education, fantasy and possibility, sexuality, identity, and the family. There can be no more important time in this onslaught of cuts to the arts and the theatre, to education and culture, to speak for and about the arts and the humanities, and to insist on their value for us all. For, as Chiwetel reminds us, with the many stories, histories, and selves that an actor embodies, comes wider knowledge, greater empathy, and deep self-understanding. Therefore, Vice-Chancellor, it is with great pleasure that I ask you to confer this degree, and I present to you Chiwetel Ejiofor.
I now call upon Chiwetel Ejiofor to respond.
Thank you. Thank you, Vice-Chancellor. Faculty, staff, graduating students, congratulations to your families too. It's an honor for me to be here accepting this degree. It's especially meaningful to me to be here in London and, one sec. and at the University of London. A city that I think of much like, much in the way that Churchill described a prehistoric monster into whose armored hide showers of arrows can be shot in vain. I owe so much to this city. I was born in Forest Gate in East London in the late 70s, began life there in a period of turmoil as the demographic shifted from white working class to more Asian and black communities. The struggles that were inherent within that shift and the ways those struggles were resolved were important markers for me growing up. In a sense, when I moved to South London, I moved to a community that already had an integrated history. But as the Brixton riots indicated, a history of integration that was equally fought for. But the riots in South London were also speaking to a way of living on a national and international scale with regards to a decolonized mind. I loved South London, from the Brixton nightlife to the football, Crystal Palace, Selhurst Park. I developed my love of literature and drama at Dulwich College and its magical theatre, the Edward Alleyne Hall. The communities of South London were diverse and engaging a plethora of different lives and ways to live life. When I moved out of home, I only went as far as Camberwell, stayed there by Cold Harbour Lane for many years. I tried to move to Borough, but it was too expensive. I ended up eventually across the river for the first time in Clerkenwell, and that was again an extraordinary experience to suddenly be around a completely different sense of London, to be closer to the old city. I love the history and discovery of the area, from Old Street back east to London Fields, all the way to King's Cross, and the short walk into Soho on a Saturday night. And then I started heading west, Baker Street, Regent's Park, Marylebone, further west, Kensington, Notting Hill, Shepherd's Bush. I've lived all over the city. The millions of different stories, different communities have given me what Claire just described as empathy and self-understanding. It's given me a vibrancy, sense of adventure, sense of belonging, and a need to belong. I look to the city for my inspiration and my education. It's a city that gives me hope, and hope is something that I felt I've needed in recent years as something heavier has crept into my worldview. Not a despondency, no, not exactly, hasn't gone that far, but definitely a fear. A fear that crises are compounding and time may be running out. Now that might sound dramatic, but I'm an actor, a writer, a director. A primary rule of drama is for the protagonist to have an objective and or at least a dilemma, preferably both, and the achievement or resolution of this problem is the rising action or tension that keeps the audience invested. And we live in a world of rising tension. From COVID to the ravages of the environment to the range of conflicts escalating right now, even in Europe. The COVID era meme of the library sign saying that the post-apocalyptic fiction section has been moved to current affairs still seems completely apt. Issues are compounding upon each other at alarming rates in a way that seems to evade individual responses and requires instead an overall curative approach. But it's hard to know what that is. And the temptation is simply to kick it over to the next generation, to some of you guys, to figure out. For me, the answer lies in leaning into the things that we do well. Human beings have an extraordinary capacity to cooperate. That's ultimately what has made this city so successful, these proud and expansive patterns of cooperation all around us. And I wonder if this concept can be further utilized in the world today. Can we cooperate and build supranational organizations that effectively prioritize lasting peace, the eradication of poverty, and the protection of our environment, with the knowledge of how interlinked these three goals are? But is the capitalist model hopelessly at odds with these goals? I don't think so. Capitalism is a relatively modern concept. Cooperation is as old as humanity. Cooperation fulfills our most basic human need, our primal need, I imagine hunter-gatherer communities moving across desolate plain or wild landscape, searching for any sign of other human life, analyzing a snapped twig or broken branch, the elation of coming across the dying embers of a fire, the knowledge that other human beings were here, the opportunity to cooperate, adapt, and survive. Perhaps a distant relative of the same emotion I have when Googling how to perfect a vegetable lasagna. The startling array of options and adaptations that any number of people have put forward. Cooperation is what we do best. The internet only works because of those layers of cooperation. I might like or dislike the vegetable lasagna options, but I don't get a list of second-hand cars when I put vegetable lasagna into the search engine. Sure, there are checks and balances, but the ultimate reason is that the tool remains useful because we have collectively decided to cooperate. Wikipedia may at times be factually or to some ideologically incorrect, but its basic function is almost miraculous, as it holds steadfast to underpinning knowledge through cooperating networks of information. We've seen online networks raise revolutions, bring down governments, but can we afford to dream a little bigger than even that? Can we afford not to? There's nothing wrong with disagreement, provided disagreement is not the goal. Nothing wrong with division, and sometimes, unfortunately, even conflict, provided that division and conflict is not the goal. Cooperation should be the goal, and disagreement should be a means of getting there. As I move through my life, I try to ask myself, what level of cooperation am I acting at? And do these levels of cooperation have a specified and positive goal? But it's not just about looking inward to understand the nature and importance of the goals we set for ourselves. We must remain critical and vigilant to the political infrastructure that surrounds us. We must always question the motives of leadership. We must demand the highest quality of political discourse and thought. We must understand the long-term goals of the system, because short-term goals, short-term leadership, short-term thinking can be incredibly destructive in the long term. Fundamentally, what I love about this city is that it has always been a city that believed in long-term thinking. The revolutionaries, anarchists, suffragettes, demonstrators, and rioters have spent centuries shaping this city, and in many ways, the ways of life in this country and around the world. It requires a population heavily invested in the future, passionate for change and positive evolution, a belief in holding up and speaking truth to power and fighting for what one believes in. As the crises compound, we need this spirit more than ever. The courage to believe in a better future and the capacity to work together to ensure it are the only tools capable of meeting the long-term challenges we face. To the graduating students, I offer my sincerest congratulations. I wish you all peace and to live in the reflected warmth of human respect. Thank you.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, that now concludes the presentation of the honorary degree and the awarding of degrees for the 2023 graduation ceremony for the School of Advanced Study. I now call upon the Vice-Chancellor, Professor Wendy Thompson, for her concluding remarks.
Well, I think it's been a fabulous celebration of your achievement, so my final congratulations to all here. It gives me great pleasure to thank you all for attending today, and well done to all of you. Today is a day to reflect on your journey to this point and the road you have ahead. It's also my great pleasure to welcome you into the global community of graduates of the University of London. Today does not signal the end of your connection with the school or with the university. Our graduates play an integral role in our unique global network and are united as part of a community of hundreds of thousands of alumni living and working all over the world. I thank all of you graduating today for your contribution already to the life of the University of London. We take enormous pride in your achievements, those so far and those to come. Please do keep in touch as you embark on the next steps of your journey. And that concludes the ceremony. Please will you all rise for the national anthem.